whenever I get a chance to be here at the Hive. And as I mentioned, this is something that we have been doing and engaging the community with for 9 years, soon to be 10 when we get to February of 2023. So we're super excited about that. The Hive is a program of Ideas for Us. So Ideas for Us, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. What that means is that we have a mission that's core to the purpose of everything that we do. So our mission is to develop ideas, fund action, and scale solutions that solve the world's most pressing environmental challenges. So developing those ideas, that's essentially what we're coming together here today to do. We're going to then fund action projects in the community. It's not uncommon for Ideas for Us to do 12 action projects a month in Central Florida alone. And then we have an international reach into 30 different countries, 9, soon to be 10 strongholds where there's action ongoing, just as much as we have going on here. So that's really exciting. And then when we discover the solutions out of this Hive workshop that have a promise to go from an action project to a program and then potentially be scaled into a social enterprise. And our example, our kind of test guinea pig of that concept was something called fleet farming. And some of you may have heard of that program. If you have Disney Plus, there is a documentary called Paris to Pittsburgh on there, and fleet farming is featured in that Disney Plus National Geographic documentary. So again, coming together and sharing these different ideas, learning from an expert speaker, taking these global issues and bringing them down to the local level is so key. And then, of course, mobilizing to implement the action projects. If you don't follow us on social media, Facebook is a great way to stay in touch with what we're doing at ideasforus.orlando. And we post all of the things locally that are going on there as well. We're also on Eventbrite and Meetup. Well, we have 5 areas that the Hive is traditionally focused on. Sometimes we have a different pillar every single month. Sometimes we integrate topics that touch on all of these pillars, but we call them the essentially 5 focus areas of environmental sustainability. So energy, water, food, waste, and ecology. We have some flagship programs that go along with those, all developed in the Hive, all diversified from the ideas of people in the communities that they serve. Well, it's really important that we are, number one, thinking of building the next generation of people who are really equipped to take action and successful action in environmentalism. And to us, what that really means is environmental action, not just advocacy. So I'm a millennial, I'm 35 years old. The narrative around environmentalism for my whole life has been, young people are the future. Here are all of these problems that they have to tackle. Good luck. And the problem with that, though correct, it's only half of the equation. The other half of the equation is, how does an everyday person do something positive and see the impact that they're making and how their little drip on the sandcastle, right, connects to a whole ocean full of problems and solutions that are out there? There's not really a method to doing that. So that's what we try to do as an organization. We want people to not only have hope, but have hope for a reason and see all of the great action that's going on around the world, because the environmental movement is far from being just doom and gloom. Some of the most extraordinary people in the world are part of the environmental movement that's going on right now, and they're creating amazing solutions unlike the world has ever seen. So really important stuff there. Shameless plug, I mentioned we are a 501c3 nonprofit. One of the best parts about that is that we're supported by thousands, if not 10,000s of people. So the collective donations, the collective ideas, the collective support from people is entirely how we are able to survive. So if you want to learn how to contribute to us and different things that you can do, by all means, check out our website, ideasforus.org. And also we have all different kinds of ways to donate. Number 5 there, cash. Normally we would have boots on everybody's table, but because of COVID, we haven't quite brought the boots back yet, but they may be coming soon. So we'll see. We've also got a podcast. So there are a lot of businesses and business leaders, philanthropists, entrepreneurs, everyday people who are taking action, scientists that are part of this movement here in Central Florida and beyond. And we want to help tell their stories. So we have a podcast. It is called the Official Ideas for Us podcast. So by all means, please check that out because it is really a great source of hearing stories, especially locally here in Central Florida, about what is going on to really move the needle in sustainability. Okay, so I'm really excited today about our topic because environmental communication is extraordinarily important. And I think that we'll get started in a way to break the ice because after all, we are here to communicate with one another. So we have some of these icebreakers threaded through to give you a chance to meet who you're at the table with, to talk to one another. I'm happy we filled out a little bit here. Sometimes we have to get everybody together, but looks like we've got clusters, but feel free to join one another's tables if you want. So, icebreaker question. Discuss at your tables. We'll take about a couple minutes here, and then we'll get some feedback from the audience. But do you talk about climate scientists with friends, family, or coworkers? Is this something that you have engaged with people on before? So talk to the person next to you. Let's see if they've engaged directly at the Thanksgiving dinner table or however they've decided to do that with family or friends. Meet one another, and we'll be back in just about a minute or two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Carlos. Hi, I'm Imod, her partner.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. Yeah. Came today. Yeah, I talk about the whole day.
Have you ever talked about this climate change or climate crisis? All the time. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand. I do not have a child, but they really think through the perspective of what will be like in the future when my child grows up. My parents they whenever because they see the unusual patterns of weather, like out of sudden kind of thunderstorm, and then kind of the patterns of weather they used to know suddenly it doesn't work. So I think older generation is going to start to acknowledge something is happening. Yeah.
Right. All right. Cool. So I love hearing that. I love hearing everybody meet one another. So many people that have teamed up to do extraordinary things have met at a Hive before, so you never know who you're going to be sitting with. So wonderful to hear some of the conversation. Anyone want to share? And I think you can project your voice, but if not, if you were to go to the mic up there, that can work too, or I can bring you the mic as well. But anyone want to share in just some of their aspects of, do you talk about climate science with friends, family, or coworkers? All right.
Yeah, I talk about it at school. I'm in the environmental program though, so that's normal. I do talk about it at home. Like for example, my dad, so they have a filtration company he works for, and he does a lot with petroleum. But he is saying that they are starting to transition in some ways with like reusing plastics and stuff for their filters. So they're getting there, and I guess so. It's interesting to talk to him because what he does is sort of the opposite of what I want to go into. But again, like they're aware, and he's open to stuff. But like we were talking just now about like just single-use plastics and things like at home. I don't do it, but like my family, they'll use like paper plates and stuff still. But you know, it's a journey. So you just keep working on people, do what you can. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. Round of applause. Anyone else want to share? All right, I'll share a little bit. So yes, I try to engage people a lot on these things. And what's cool that we realized from these discussions in the Hive is what if we created an event specifically for people who were questioning climate science to come to? And what if we also served alcohol there? So we created a program called Drink Beer, Talk Climate, and it is something that we did, of course, pre-COVID, right, as one of our fun events, and we would do it 2 or 3 times a year at different breweries around Central Florida, and really had a great time engaging and talking with people in a fun, open way. So be on the lookout. We will certainly do it again as things continue to hopefully get better and better around COVID and COVID rates. Yes. Perfect. There you go. Absolutely. So also, I think it's important for us to realize that really as an individual, right, you kind of think of things through that lens of what can I do as an individual? Well, everybody has 3, right, superpowers, essentially. Your vote, right? That's very important. We know that. Please always vote, even in local elections, right? Your voice, that's tremendously powerful, and you want to use that in a responsible, meaningful way so that it's really taken seriously and you think and plan through your ideas, and that's what today is about too. And then, of course, your dollar, right? And what we choose to spend money on and all of those types of things. So, it takes money to be sustainable, right? And that's something that we're really helping to investigate further of how do you reach people who are farthest from sustainability with sustainability solutions, because we don't want sustainability to just be something that is reserved for people who can afford to be sustainable. So thinking about those things is quite important too. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed lecturer tonight, Dr. Soo-Young Choi, who made the drive from DeLand from Stetson University. So we really appreciate that, especially at rush hour, which Orlando is no joke at rush hour, especially now. So let's welcome her, give her a round of applause, and welcome, Doctor.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Thank you so much for coming today. I'm really excited to be here. So today we will think about the topic, environmental communication, the issue of communicating about the environment. So to do that, first, let me show you the visual representation of global warming's 6 Americas. So I will let you know what each category means and think about which category you are currently belong to or which categories you've been through. So the alarmed are convinced that global warming is happening, it's serious, and we need to support the climate policies very strongly. The concerned believe the global warming is happening, is a serious issue, but the impact of climate might happen in the near future, not right now. So climate issues are less priority. The cautious have not made their mind yet. Is it happening or not? I will see more. I will see more. The disengaged, they rarely kind of read or kind of know about climate change, but they're not interested either. The doubtful, they don't believe global warming is happening, and they think just a pattern of climate is just a natural cycle. The dismissive, they don't believe the global warming is happening, and most believe conspiracy theories, like a climate change is a hoax. Okay. So, icebreaker question. Okay, what % of US adults believe in human-caused climate change? How many of you think A would be the answer? A, okay. How many of you think B would be the answer? How many of you believe C is the answer? Okay. How many of you think D? Okay, D is too much. Okay, some? Okay, one person? Okay. Okay. So, yes, C. Generally, these days, when we reach at the situation we cannot deny anymore. A lot of people think global warming is happening. So, Yale University and George Mason University, they conduct a survey every year, and this is a result of last year. The most answered question is for they are alarmed. And if we see the 5-year trend, as you can see, the more recently the people who are alarmed, who are concerned, has been increased. So I'd like to ask you a question. So this phenomenon about thinking about what's going on around us, what's going on the earth, and there are 6 ways of thinking. Does this phenomenon of difference matter? Is there anyone who give a short answer why this matter? What?
This matters because it affects all of us.
Oh, yes.
Sets the stage for how successful communication about it and to help solve problems because if you're not on the same level.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So if we cannot share the same ground, how can we communicate? And also, its importance, it matters because what we think is directly related to how we act, what we support, what we pay attention to in terms of our attention and resource and time and support. So another part of survey shows the alarmed are more likely to support organizations, environmental organizations against the global warming. And also not only for supporting organizations, kind of the alarmed are more likely to engage in non-violent civil disobedience in support of action on global warming. So they are more willing to engage in actions, environmental action. Then let me ask you another question. Okay, what makes the differences among 6 Americas? I can give you a minute. What makes, why people think differently? We are experiencing that we are in this world, and why we think differently? Any thought? The context, a different living context might impact us kind of thinking differently. Other idea?
I think it depends on like groups you're in. I don't mean just like politically, like just in general. If depending on like social groups and things, you may follow somebody or just like a leader who doesn't believe in climate change, then those people might be more in that view. Or if you are more involved with people who do believe in climate change, then maybe you would become more concerned.
Our social relationship, kind of what people around us thinking might also affect us. Any other idea?
Education. I know definitely my major, biology, has a lot more classes on how climate change is real versus other majors, which don't really see that as a problem.
Yeah, education also affect us. Yeah, thank you. So we can think about this question together. Okay, then can 6 Americas communicate one another? Maybe this is why you are coming here tonight. And also this is not only the issue of America, it's a global issue. Kind of people should be able to communicate within the country, across the country, to be able to address the planetary issues together. So we will think about this. So let me share the insights of communication scholars about how we communicate about the environment and also science. At first, scholars thought, okay, maybe the issue is about information, sharing the knowledge and sharing the information, then we can better communicate. The issue is the information. So here, this is called the deficit model. So communication, it was imagined to knowledge is transferred from experts or scientists to the society, kind of non-experts. So when knowledge transfer is done, communication was understood to be completed. But soon, they found the problem of this deficit model because modern society is very complex. Communication process is also. So transferring knowledge is not that simple. So because there are many institutions, many actors come into play. It's not simply scientists giving information to non-scientists. Many institutions like universities, government agencies, organizations, corporations come into play, add their interpretation, try to shape the message, and also audiences have their own thought and worldviews. So, okay, sharing scientific knowledge, communication is done. This is not working like that. Another challenge would be these deficit models negligence about the role of audience. One-sided communication does not work well. So I like to share about communication scholars focusing on the role of audience, kind of their agency. So we should think about, when we think about the communication, it's not senders sending message to receiver. It's more like that we should think about audience interpretations. What happens to audience mind? When I'm saying this information, maybe a lot of thinking of ideas and memories, experiences come to your mind. This should be regarded as a part of communication. So at least kind of there are 3 types of understanding message. It's called decoding. So first, the receiver, at least there are 3 ways of how audience can receive information or message. The first is accepting. When a receiver accepts the given message, what happens to audience mind is that seeking to validate a new message by integrating the new message with the previous perspective or worldview they have already. They try to integrate, so by accepting message. But also, it's possible they reject the message, especially when the new message conflicts with their prior worldviews and value system. Then, they seeking to undermine the authority or validity of new information and try to be able to retain the integrity of previous perspective. But many people also try to find a middle way, kind of by modifying message. They can be selective, some accepting some information. So what's happening on their mind when they try to modify and negotiate with the new message, they try to adapt and negotiate the new information to more closely aligned with their prior perspectives, as long as it doesn't hurt their prior worldviews that much. So potentially in this way, they can damage the intended meaning of new information to some extent. So if we think about this kind of different ways of receiving message, we can understand the communication process better. So incorporating this idea, the new model of communicating the environment and science can be understood rather than one-directional, kind of one-sided communication. You can think about as an exchange among the multiple actors. Not only information, not only about the knowledge, but also perspectives and viewpoints among the multiple actors. Not only expert is the participant, but also the ordinary citizens and kind of government agencies, a lot of institutional actors. And I think ideas for us is one of such a strong actor as well. So here kind of we can think about eventually in this whole process of communication, most important thing is that know your audience based on not what they already know, but based on who they are. So delivering message, we can easily think about, okay, when we want to communicate, it's equally to be understood as spreading message. That can be a start, but it's not the end and it's not enough. So environmental communication scholars, they come up with all sorts of ideas to be able to accurately distinguish the diversity of audience group to target their message more accurately. So they sometimes think about this, okay, there might be a spectrum environmental ideology. So maybe kind of on the one hand, there are people who think more emphasizing the human over the rest of all creatures on the earth. But we can also think about the ideologies which are more geared toward coexistence oriented. To think about kind of how we society should be ready to change if we need to be coexisting with the non-human creatures on the world. But also there's a kind of eco-cultural identity. This is kind of also the idea to understand the people with diverse kind of who are located in the diverse kind of social situations, and there are many factors come into play in forming their identity. But today I like to, today I like to introduce the example, especially from this book on the left. And also, but you can check by yourself if you're interested in these ideas about communicating the climate crisis. So the interesting part of communication strategies for engaging climate skeptics, not only she's a rhetorician, Dr. Bloomfield is a rhetorician. The rhetoricians are very interested in the persuasive uses of language, and then their focus is on the persuasion. But she kind of argues that we should think the communication, the disposition of climate skeptics is not the result of lack of information, but is more like a sign of a deep-rooted identity. So we should approach climate skeptics not as people who are ignorant about a certain information, but they are expressing some of their identities. So we need to approach to that. So we can think about dialogue not necessarily directly trying to persuade your audience, but more like to identify who they are, more in-depth level to be able to form a common ground. So she really emphasized the listening, and we can think about three ideas, each of which has own action, connected action. So first is that, maybe it's hard immediately, but acknowledge the existence of multiple ideas and difference. Even if we share the idea of global warming is happening, human caused, maybe if we go deep down, maybe we always find the differences and disagreement. But once we acknowledge that, we can think about actions which are not geared to eliminate the different positions, but more like understanding this position. But also, she emphasized how listening can be connected to our seeking, asking question. Rather than spreading our own words, and we can invite their talk. And so that they can open up their mind, and then we can achieve common ground and points of similarity. So in that regard, what Clay said, like having beers and talk about the climate, I think it'll be a very great idea. Yeah, love beers. It's a common ground, no matter how we think differently about the climate. So she introduces three types of climate change skeptics among Christians, and then she found how much different factors like religion and politics and economics come into play. Although we focus on talking about the environment, people are not just to talk about environment, they talk about other things as well. So among the Christians, they are not exhaustive types, but there are representative types, and she found the three types. Separators, think about if you can apply these three types to other areas of social groups you might know. So first group is separators. Among the Christians, they reject scientific consensus on climate change and position themselves as gatekeepers for definitions and authority, and employs a hierarchy of humans over animals. So they might be hard audience if you want to convince them about the global warming. The second group is bargainers. They borrow concepts. They are open-minded a little bit, borrow the concept and standards from environmental science, but they modify and cherry pick to promote a skepticism toward the scientific consensus of climate change. Okay? The last group is harmonizers. So they recognize climate change as a scientifically legitimized reality, but may not engage in climate advocacy. So they can easily become members of a disinterested public that acknowledges climate change, but does not act. So think about it, how you can make a dialogue with each group, how you can differentiate your approach. So she suggested some strategies depending on each group, because obviously separators, they are more rejecting the messages regarding climate change. Bargainers, they try to negotiate, try to cherry pick. Harmonizers accept, but they are more passive in terms of moving towards action. Is there anyone who have experienced kind of difficulty or find a certain ways of communicating with people who are denying global warming? Anyone? Frustrated experience or kind of very kind of a great experience? No? Oh, Clay?
Okay, so I try to have these kinds of conversations. So I think I'm kind of in a unique position in that most people don't go out of their way to converse with people who think differently than they do, and maybe will even be combatively argumentative towards them. But I really love that kind of thing, and I really enjoyed wrapping my brain around why people believe certain things. And for me, I think it's so important to really just greet everything with an open mind and to try to understand first where the person is coming from. Why do they have this particular belief set? Are they playing into an ideology and they're just kind of parroting something that they've heard that they believe they should say? Are they maybe having a misunderstanding of science, right? The confusion of climate and weather, the confusion of the fact that things like natural gas isn't carbon dioxide, but is still a greenhouse gas, right? And maybe not understanding that things besides carbon dioxide can be greenhouse gases. So there's a science literacy aspect here too. And I think that that's really important. One of the best things that I've learned too is to have a lot of these conversations with kids because they are sponges for what they hear, and especially kids that have maybe families of differing ideologies. Engaging and talking to those kids and learning about why they have those beliefs has always been something that's been fascinating for me and is a great clue to how to engage with people like their parents.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, actually, Clay already kind of applied a lot of different communication strategies I will talk about soon. But is there anyone who have experienced?
So like for me, what I'm trying to kind of go into is more on the business side. So I'm trying to find out ways to approach climate to businesses, hopefully in the future. So like one of my perspectives on being able to do with my dad sometimes, because he's like a business person, is explaining like climate impact for things, but also trying to, and I don't know if this is bad to do, but also showing like benefits for like a business or a person in a way too, like both sides. Like example, we have gas cars, and I'm like, oh, you should get an electric car. Benefits, but also like it'll save you with like for gas and long-term less maintenance. And then so for businesses, like, well, if I can try to help them switch to solar or use more sustainable things, yes, it's good for the environment, but is it bad for me to also kind of emphasize like the savings in the end because that will help push them? So it's kind of a mix of like, do you think that's okay to do, like to mix that together, especially when it comes to business?
Yeah, I think kind of what your example, thank you so much, kind of your example exactly connected to the strategies of finding some common ground and asking a lot of questions to get to understand your audience, but also kind of so what your example is perfect because you try to find the common interest, kind of because your dad is kind of is a businessman, kind of he wants to seek for what's the kind of benefit, what's the kind of opportunity for business. So action for climate better might have some common point about the business point of view. So actually this is really great strategies. Yeah, thank you for sharing this example. So when you try to communicate with the climate change skeptics, kind of separators, kind of who have more kind of closed-minded, maybe kind of it'll be premature if you want to convince them by kind of offering and kind of throwing the kind of climate science facts and kind of knowledges. It might not work. Maybe it's better to ask questions and kind of, and it's not only about environment and science, but also about other areas. And kind of maybe this will be the kind of opening the gate to find a common ground. Maybe they have a pet, or they may have a certain place they really care about, although they are not necessarily thinking connecting to the notion of environment and natural world. So you can start from there. If you are more communicating with the bargainers who are kind of very negotiating about the science in a very convenient way, kind of maybe you can acknowledge to some part about what they know. In this case, Christians, I think, is a value of the revolution. I think is about the kind of genesis of creation narrative. But you can offer some counterexamples. Counterexamples, I think what Clay said about offering examples and kind of science literacy, I think it can be a connected example. So offer counterexamples to their assumptions about the environmentalists or the science. So still, you can try to maintain some common ground so that you don't kind of cut out the channel of communication. About the harmonizers, I think you can have a little bit more active stance.
Disconnect.
Active positions with the harmonizers because they're more open to the ideas of climate science. So you can more kind of encourage them, empower them, encouraging harmonizers to think more globally and think about what they can do and envision themselves as a powerful agents who are capable of creating change. So you can kind of differently, here, whole point is to approach your audience differently, and after you figure out who they are as much as possible. So this is a point. So I brought some example from my research. I recently studied about the environmental activists, especially animal rights activism, which is arising in South Korea. I originally came from South Korea. So they were very transnationally connected. So to the extent they recently kind of participated in the March of Animal Liberation Conference held in Oakland, California last year, October. So I kind of interviewed them. I brought this quote because I found it very interesting, and their communication strategy is so something we can take lessons from. So they kind of met contingent workers who are very skeptical about the idea of making a movement for non-humans. Human issue is already so kind of overwhelming. So they are kind of more kind of distanced from the ideas about activism for non-humans. So she told me, so I will
Disconnect.
read. She said, I had a chance to talk in front of contingent workers who are skeptical about animal rights activism and indifferent about the problem of factory farming and its relation to global warming. So I chose to mainly talk about what I saw and talk with workers in factory farms, highlighting how the problems of humans and non-humans are connected and why we think of them together. So she said she barely talked about animals. Very interestingly, she's an animal rights activist, but she mainly talked about the workers who work there in factory farms. In this way, kind of she opened the way. They kind of, they found some connections. They can better understand why animal rights activists say what they have to say. So here we can kind of take some points. What was interesting for me is that she said, I really intentionally and with my effort tried to believe people can change, not dramatically, but even small. They can be open about the new ideas. So it's important thing to engage people authentically. You don't have to pretend, you don't have to hide, but you can just open up your mind and kind of asking questions. You show willingness to understand your audience in front of your eyes. And empowering your audience, not belittle them, not to kind of point it out what they do not know, to try to empower your audience so that they can open your mind to you. And finding a common ground. I think this is a very powerful strategy. It doesn't have to be environment necessarily, but start some point. Finding a common ground, a point to connect each other, kind of bonding first, and then start from there. Start from there and expand conversation about the environment. Okay, so then let's move on a little bit about, let's say we succeed in finding a common ground, and we are able to bond with your audience a little bit. So how to motivate individuals to take actions, how we can think about your audience to take some actions. So here, wrong assumption, we already learned from deficit model, providing information is not enough. It's not enough. So would you think about the moment when you started to change your behavior or habit about anything? It can be about diet, consumption, public action, or even the communication. Even the people who come to this place first time, what made you make a decision? What, in retrospect, what triggered such a change in your behavior or habit? Any thought? Clay?
So for starters, usually when people change their minds, it tends to be based around emotion, right? I think one of the things that professors sometimes struggle with and educators and things like that is that people don't usually change their mind based on just facts, right? So a lot of times when I'm engaging people on anything to do with environmentalism, I really use stories as a way of illustrating different cause and effect and ways of thinking. And that tends to kind of get understood and absorbed a little bit more than just kind of parroting off facts off of a Wikipedia page to somebody. It would be nice if facts affected people's decisions and feelings on things, but it tends to be emotion, at least in my observation.
Yeah, actually, okay, yeah.
But I guess the question, because I don't do want to use the mic. Totally up to you. It's just, I kind of hesitated to raise my hand because it's something that I have been wondering for a while. With close family, we have this discussion a lot. There's an influx of information and stories and emotional triggers, on social media, Instagram and such. And for me, it's very overwhelming and it kind of pushes me to try to focus on, okay, what do I have control over? Otherwise I'll go crazy. But a family member has told me like she felt kind of stuck. I'm like, well, everything sucks kind of thing sometimes, with everything you see. So it's very possible to become like a harmonizer, the example that you gave of somebody who agrees, but they don't really take action. So it's something I'm still not really understanding, what pushes somebody into action versus getting frozen in action.
Thanks so much.
I would say major events are something that would like whenever I'm looking back at things that changed in my life, a major event, say my life that has occurred, or perhaps a major event in the world that's happening, say that's something crazy like COVID or the Black Lives Matter movement, and that brings everybody to their feet outside and stuff like that. Those are certain things where I see it's a major event, and you feel compelled to do something about it. I even had like a car accident in my life changed the way I lived. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, this is really important. Kind of major event. This can be happen on an individual level, but societal level, but it can be impactful on us. Actually, kind of what you said are all kind of aligned with what environmental communication scholars emphasize as well. It's kind of, we are connected. So they kind of found, a lot of also social movement scholars found emotion is a really important factor which ignite people to participate in some actions. So emotions has a lot of colors. Even kind of the 6 categories are it can be kind of very narrowed one. But we can still kind of play with these categories. There are 6 categories here: excited, tender, scared, angry, sad, and happy. In terms of environmental actions, which emotions do you think are relevant to environmental actions? It cannot be necessarily one, it can be multiple.
Scared is a big one with people just, especially believers. There's eco-anxiety, anger towards people who are very neglectful of the fact that if this is a real thing. Sadness because sometimes it feels like it's a losing battle. There are people, big people in charge and we're just the common people, and sometimes that can just make someone feel so helpless. But then there's also happiness as well when you feel optimistic that you can make a difference yourself by banding together and creating that sense of community.
Yeah. Actually, there are kind of many emotions can come into play. Yeah, especially kind of the bottom part is mostly kind of negative emotions, but definitely it can be related, kind of, especially when we feel helpless about because kind of this climate is happening on the global level and the Earth's planetary level. What we can do. Kind of, it can be depressing as well. But at the same time, when we see, okay, kind of, I thought that kind of, I'm the only one who feel helpless. Maybe I'm isolated. But whenever we see a people and group are emerging here and there, kind of suggesting something, kind of make a kind of action something together in big, and then we're inspired and happy. Maybe I should join this. So a lot of emotions are coming to play about communicating about the environment and environmental actions. And what they found additionally, and also I think this is very important, and people are encouraged to take actions when emotions are strongly connected to their value, so especially when they're valued projects, valued objects, life, human life, non-human life, women life, or sacred symbol, when they are violated or threatened, they feel obligated to act something, to act upon it, and provide their support to help restore those values. So they mentioned the kind of BLM movement, kind of US citizens' actions against the threatened Black lives. This is an example that Alaska Knife kind of Gwich'in tribe, they kind of act and protested about the oil drilling company because their sacred animals, porcupine, caribou, are threatened by this expensive drilling activity. So here, kind of, it's really important to think about how kind of people's emotion connected to certain values. Maybe this kind of a connection will be very helpful for you to understand how we communicate a certain message. So there are 3 types of value you can think about, kind of roughly. The first is egoistic concern. It's related egoistic concerns. It's very basic, focusing on ourselves. We want to be healthy. We want to have a quality of life, and we want to be prosperity, have a prosperity, and we want a convenient life. But at the same time, we also want a people for the people we love, we care, children, family, community, if we can expand humanity. But also there's a value related to biospheric concerns. If we expand our views, our world, this globe is not only composed of humans, and much more thousands and millions of species, and kind of it's their home as well. So biospheric concerns focusing on the well-being of living things. So even we can think about the polluted water, these 3 value systems can exist together. I don't want to drink a polluted water. You can definitely think that basically, but also you can think about, I don't want my children, I don't want my family, I don't want my community kind of to drink a polluted water. But also you can think about and worry about, I don't want that this drink polluted water have a harmful effect on marine animals. So these kind of environmental behaviors can be connected to these multiple values. So when you are communicating the environment, if you have to draft some environmental message, maybe you can think about how to incorporate these 3 values strategically. So definitely you need to appeal to an individual's egoistic value, given that we cannot underestimate how this value is deeply rooted in society. People care about themselves. But also you can highlight the social altruistic value to mobilize support from a wider public who care about their families and communities. But also you always try to expand your message with incorporating the biospheric value to emphasize the human, we are the interdependent being, we are the part of the nature. Okay, so I'm closing my lecture by emphasizing the takeaways of today's topic, environmental communication. So to summarize, to achieve the common grounds for environmental action, so the emphasis is this, our attention shift is needed from spreading information, this is kind of important, but this cannot be and. It's more like to creating dialogues. So creating dialogue should be a goal beyond the spreading information. And also from the emphasis on sending message to listening to your audience. Maybe kind of by emphasizing listening to your audience, you earn their mind, you earn their space to receive your message better. And from the focus on persuasion to identification as the goal of engaging dialogue, you should figure out your audience first. And from the ideas of foes or dupes to dialogue partners, regardless of how different, how gaps between you and your audience looked so far and deep. We want to empower them, empower your audience. We want to deeply understand their attitudes toward the environment. So yeah, it's really kind of, I cannot emphasize enough how important trust giving is. You should make your audience feel you trust them. So they are trusted by you. Then they can open their mind. And connection between emotion and value. And value can be categorized by egoistic and social altruistic and biospheric. And you can kind of incorporate these values differently according to, depending on what kind of message you wanna share. So this connection between emotion and value will be very important to motivate individuals to take actions. I think that's it. Question?
I came in a little late. I'll go to the microphone. I've been scribbling. I'm Dave Finnegan, and I have been a culture change person for 60 years, probably. And my job has been to create the change in cultures. I was in South Korea from 1966 to 1976. 고맙습니다. And I worked on the family planning program in Korea. At the time that I got there, the average family size was 6 kids. And it was imperative that every woman would have 3 sons. One would be to go into the military. One would be to be a business person, and the third would be religious or spiritual. That was sort of the ideal. We had to change that because the Korean family planning program wanted first to reduce fertility to the point where there would be no more than 3 kids per family. So that's a huge change. And I was a consultant to that family planning program. So as a consultant, I brought in a consultant. And the consultant was Everett Rogers. And he's the father of what they call diffusion of innovation theory. And Professor Rogers came and spent a lot of time, first in Korea, then in Taiwan, helping people understand how decisions get made about big things like having kids. And I think the conclusion that we reached was that we couldn't give the same message to everyone. In fact, we figured out that the people who we needed to talk to were innovators. And the innovators were the people who already had the idea, who understood that if Korea continued to have 6 kids per family, Korea would no longer exist in about 2 generations. There were 30 million people in Korea when I got there. It was destined that Korea would have 100 million by now if they continued to have 5 and 6 kids per family. So we targeted the innovators first. And the innovators are people who already have the idea. And then we went to the early adopters. And early adopters, we felt, were women who were in their early 20s who had decided that they didn't want to be exactly like their moms. So we trained a cadre of 2,400 village women to go door to door and to talk to other women, not about family planning, not about population, but about how to have a happy family. And the model we used, which nobody would admit was the model we were using, was Japan. Because in Japan, the average family size was 2. And Japan had skyrocketed economically before the war and again after the war. And a lot of it had to do with demography. Demography is destiny. If you have 6 kids, you're going to be a poor country. So we started with the innovators, then we went to the early adopters, and then they brought us the late adopters. The late adopters were the women in the village who hadn't ever heard about small family size and couldn't even conceive of contraception. And then they brought in the third group, which is the late majority. So it was early innovators, early adopters, early majority, and then the late majority. And the late majority were those feet draggers who were going like, oh, this is never going to fly, this won't work. So we targeted those groups, and we ignored the laggards. And the problem with a lot of the climate change work is that everybody hammers on the laggards. We should ignore the laggards. The laggards aren't going to help us. They're just going to be opposition forever. So as a consequence, within 20 years, we took the average family size to 2 kids, and son preference disappeared. The Korean culture now is such that if you ask a young Korean family, do you want a son or a daughter? They'll say, it doesn't matter. Or they'll even say, I want a daughter. That would not happen in 1966 when I got there. So the culture changed. And the reason the culture changed was because we targeted the different populations and worked with them in a systematic order. There's a ladder that everybody has to climb if they want to change their thought pattern, they want to change their behavior. It starts with awareness. So we started by bringing awareness to people. And then we gave them the next step, which was to cultivate their interest, get them to the point where they'll talk about it. Then the third step is to give them a chance to try something, trial. So it goes from awareness to interest to trial. And in our case, we would have the women get condoms and use condoms. And that was an easy ask, to ask a young woman in her early 20s, can you get your husband to use condoms? Well, that brought the men on board. So all of a sudden, from a woman's movement, it became a family movement. If they had success with an easy start method, then we took them to the next step. So they would evaluate how they did. So it goes from awareness to interest to trial to evaluation. And they go, yeah, that worked. Would you like to try something else? They say, yes. Then we'd offer them the oral contraceptive, which was brand new at the time, or tubal ligation, or vasectomy, or the IUD. Well, among them, the IUD became the very most popular. In about a decade, we, the Korean government, and their one foreign advisor, that's me, inserted over 2 million IUDs. Incredible. Never been done anywhere else in the world. And then that makes them an adopter. So once they're an adopter, then they get reinforcement from the community for the adoption, and that's called confirmation. And once they have that confirmation, then they become advocates, and they go out and push what it is that you're trying to do. So there's really an established method for going step by step from awareness to interest to trial to evaluation to trial to evaluation to trial to evaluation. That's a closed loop, to adoption, to confirmation, and then to advocacy. So I suggest everybody look at diffusion of innovations theory. It really works. And I did that with the family planning program in Korea. And then when we have our public thing later, I'll tell you what I did after that, because it's the same thing, but I did it on a different topic. So my job I'm 80, and my job for the last 60 years has been culture change. How do you get a culture to change? So if anybody wants to talk about that more, I'm happy to. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for elaboration of what you experienced. I think kind of this kind of 5-step change definitely can be incorporated, like issues like no kind of single plastic use or zero waste movement, which I recently see throughout the social media. Yeah, thank you so much. But I think kind of what you said is really kind of aligned with today's topic about the importance of knowing your audience. That's the takeaway. Thank you so much for your coming and listening to lecture.
All right. Mic check? Okay, cool. All right. Thank you, Doctor. We really appreciate that. And, when it comes to things that we can immediately use, this is pretty high up there in that, right? All of us engage with different people who have different ideas about these things. Even if someone is on the side of, believing in the science, acknowledging climate change, you can still have these kinds of conversations with someone to encourage and strengthen their ability to talk to other people about it as well. So that's extraordinarily important. Okay, let's see. So, great. So discuss at your table some examples of a successful movement in society and what made it so productive or successful. How can we use these tactics to advance the Orlando climate movement? Right, so we want to think about, there's an environmental movement going on here in this community. It takes many different forms. You may remember in the past, if you've come to the Hive before, we had a number of hives about the Split Oak Preserve and the fight for not just protecting that land, but keeping it protected, especially from a giant road being plowed right through the middle of the conservation land. And we mobilized people in the community. They came out and had their voices heard to county commission. And luckily for now, at least, the Split Oak Preserve has been saved, though it continues to be threatened usually every 18 months. So we'll see what happens. But that is an example of a localized climate and environmental movement that took on a whole community background. So what we want you to do is think about, what are some of those things that you experience in your community on these whiteboards with the people at your table? And what are some elements that we can borrow from past successful environmental campaigns to bring into some of the things that you all feel are hot topics? So we're going to go to the breakout session. We're going to take about 10 minutes to do that. Please feel free to grab some cookies and things in the back of the room. Please eat them all so you don't have to compost them. And after that, we'll go into sharing what you have on your boards, and we'll close out the evening. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope that it was helpful to people. So you said kind of you're working in architecture. It's like an energy efficient kind of a building like that. Yeah. That's what we're Oh, like outside you can control the temperature in the room, something like that. Yeah, yeah. Yes. smart. Everything becomes smart. Oh. Yeah, interesting. So I have a student really into environmental activism, and she said like she feels like environmentally friendly. She feels like she needs resources, like but she feels broke at this point. So she's kind of frustrated. So I kind of asked her, what made you think that kind of to be environmentally friendly, kind of you have to be rich? And then she kind of make an example that kind of she knows a woman, I think is her 60s, and she's very affluent, and she does everything. And one of the thing is like a very energy efficient kind of smart home, I think. So yeah, I was wondering when I hear this idea, kind of how affordable, maybe energy efficient equipment, how better, how it could be good, kind of for people who want to adopt this practice. I just kind of yeah, when I heard that, kind of, is it expensive now at this point in the market? Uh-huh. Talking about kind of how energy efficient kind of technology, how it can helpful to make these facilities become affordable to many people. Yeah, yeah. Egoistic value, prosperity. Yeah, yeah, yeah. People have a stereotype about like environmental friendly facility is expensive. It goes against my kind of benefits. Things, then it can be really yeah groundbreaking. Yeah, yeah. Corporations get some support from government, but especially the Biden administration energy. So they um, Uh-huh.
No, that one transition of maybe
Yeah, because I was wondering whenever I see the news that Biden kind of announced that kind of we will spend such a billions and billions of dollars for green energy, I was wondering, and kind of the will create jobs as well. So do you see it? Created? I guess that they might also have a chain effect on universities, kind of they might more like expect students that if you study this, you might have a job here and there.
even in communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. What made you choose Hive? Oh, sharing information later. Okay. As a pandemic. The deer, yeah, deer, the kind of a downtown of Paris, like, yeah.
Animals, rages,
Yeah. Just kind of a difference of they kind of immediately start to kind of figure out what we can do. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, from the perspective of efficient kind of energy use, yeah.
Yeah, I try to get like
regard, that kind of this is kind of one aspect pandemic kind of enable us to think about like how kind of external kind of nature is not external. Kind of we are kind of living together. Virus, we are living with the virus. Yeah, they are part of the members of this earth. So. Right. I think the thing is that young people are more active. I see that kind of students like are really kind of interested in this, talking about environment. So I think it's a kind of good sign.
Okay, let's do a 1-minute warning. So just kind of get your thoughts together. We're going to go around table by table, see what you all have come up with. Just so you know, too, at the end of this, we're going to photograph these tables, and then we post the pictures of the boards on our Facebook page for the Hive, just so that everybody, can kind of see what the group has come up with. And then, of course, this is the information that we use to design different kinds of action projects in the community. So 30-second warning now for everybody to get their thoughts together.
I think, Carlos, you can kind of share. But because we talk about kind of how energy efficient kind of building, kind
Providing people ways to save, providing skills and internship. Things are going to integrate people into the industry, and once they are in the industry,
yeah, combine environmental values with egoistic, their concerned values, kind of what they can benefit from by participating in environmental activities.
they always believe that you need to egoistic is the starting point. Everything else fails. At the same time, because it's reasonable starting. You want to save money, who doesn't? Who don't do it? So thinking about egoistic interest is the starting point. Interest, interest, starting point.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll leave the prompt up on there. Okay, everybody, great work. So a lot of great conversations going on in the room from what I was able to overhear a little bit of. So really fantastic, but now's the time that I want to give you all the floor. So I'm gonna have the mic go around the room here and just share, number one, please introduce yourself so we know who you are. Also, of course, share some of the things that are on your board and that came up in conversation with your group, and anything else that you'd like to add to this. So let's go on around. We're probably going to want to spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes per table, just because we do have a hard stop to get out of here before 9 o'clock, or we will be locked inside. So, all right, let's get started.
Hey everyone, I'm Carlos. We talked about a lot of things, but primarily we talked about digitalization and it being a movement. So we talked about using technology to promote change and educating people with technology, whether that's social media or with information that we already have at our fingertips. We talked about education. I'm sorry, I'm blocking you guys
It's okay,
completely.
that's fine. That's fine.
Education. So we talked about specifically Valencia has an energy management and controls technology program, and how what the students are learning and what they can participate in can lead to change and them becoming part of the communities. And then we also talked about starting with the kind of those egoistic needs and those interests as a starting point with people. Kind of what Dr. Cho talked about, being kind of appealing to what people care about before telling them about the facts or anything else. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Alrighty, thank you. Over here now. Awesome.
Hello, my name is Sabrina. I'm an intern for Ideas UCF. We were saying definitely social media awareness. I personally know that just even sharing petitions is a great way, making it very easy. And if you see your friend advocating for something, you're like, okay, this is someone I care about. I'm gonna also sign this too. What does this really take out of my day? And just through, like just as I was saying, people share. If you're sorry, if you're friends with someone, you would try to just be in support of them. So you slowly start to gain those ideas and perspectives. So the more people that hop on are the more people that it can essentially ripple out to. Also, I've seen just from tabling and stuff, we've gained so much more petitions, signings and stuff from the Florida Five and whatnot, and protests. You see people more on the, you see people who are advocates and activists, and that gives you a little bit of inspiration. Businesses, if you make businesses think that environmentalism is more profitable, then they will hop on it, and such as switching to solar. That can save a lot of money in electric costs, as well as, say, I work at a bar, and now we're switching from plastic cups to glass cups just because plastic has been increasing in costs. So they just want to save that kind of money. And also just trends are a real thing, and increasing that kind of it's trendy to be an environmentalist, such as thrifting. That is one thing that's been on the rise and more popular. And also making things more accessible, so such as providing recycling bins. If we can make those kinds of programs more accessible in our communities, then people won't think of it as going such out of their way to help the environment.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura. Becky, right? And Daniel. Oh, how are you going to hold it in that direction? Oh, okay. But then nobody over here seeing.
They're like,
The front of the room. Go, Daniel. Yeah, I'll coach you from here. Yes. So we wrote tactics because we were kind of brainstorming, and there's sort of 3 points, but the one I want to focus on is the one in the middle. We kind of took some of your points in terms of the early adopters and the laggards, and we kind of took that idea in terms of encouraging the small mom and pop businesses to incorporate more zero waste or sustainable options. And Becky brought up a good point that she will make specific notations in like her Google reviews to those small mom and pops, and they get really excited about that because that brings in a lot more people. So it's incentives for the smaller businesses to do it, and slowly potentially kind of help encouraging and developing, similar to what Sabrina was talking about in terms of trends, and showing the influence that that has, and it creates that mental shift and that social shift in terms of what we prioritize. Anything?
And then we had two other tactics, really briefly, hyperlocal events. We want to encourage that dialogue that you talked about. And part of that is focusing on what people care about, things like community gardens, community cleanups, and then using that to draw people into larger environmental focused events. Last one, municipalities and government initiatives. Examples, things like composter giveaways, Duke Energy giving away shade trees, trying to encourage those sorts of initiatives and get people to buy in, and make that something that they do more frequently. So those were our three.
You can come back.
Hello, my name is Jill. I'm an art teacher and I run our school gardens at the Park House Academy. And it has been a very successful program, and we think that we can make a change in society by educating our children. They take that excitement home with them, and they tell their parents to recycle their food waste and save their seeds. And what else? Save their avocado pits. We have lots of avocado trees, and those kids are just waiting 7 years for their avocados. They can almost taste it. We have butterfly gardens, pizza gardens, healing gardens. We actually created a video. I wish I had a link. I forget what it is, but we created a healing garden video, and we had about 10 or 15 kids talking about healing herbs. We grow ginger, and yesterday I was in the garden and I found the little ginger head that I forgot to pick. And I said, oh, wow, look at all the ginger in there. And they said, oh, it's like Christmas. So they're so excited to see the fruits of their labor, and they're willing to try healthy foods, and they encourage their friends to compost their banana peels because the worms are hungry, and they're vegetarians, they don't like meat. So all of these little bits of information they take home with them, so it's pretty exciting to see that. Anyone else?
Actually, I'm gonna go really quick. Sorry. In terms of the question, the question is examples of a successful movement. I believe that the most successful movement was Martin Luther King Jr. And the way that they did that movement, that's very admirable. You know what I mean? They had to go through such lengths and such hardship and such intrinsic within the community, within the police. Everything was against them, and somehow they were able to jump all of these things and make some real change in the community. And so I'm thinking in terms of what they did, being very peaceful, being stopping using the buses, which they used the buses the most at the time. I think those are the types of things where we can start to look at and start to create real change, because at the end of the day, maybe some people think that it's not such a big deal, but I mean, this is our earth, and that's the things that I think about with the question.
Dangerous to hand me a microphone. The reason I'm here is because I'm going to start a movement, and it has to do with kids. I have spent the last decade working on a book called The Green Actioneer's Family Action Guide. And it's everything that a family needs in order to go green. It's in English and it's in Spanish. It's full of coloring book pictures that kids can illustrate. It's got quotes from famous people. This one's from Bill Gates, but I got one from Ronald Reagan too. It's got games and puzzles for older kids, all based on the information in the book. You might think of it as drawdown for families. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this book to every school in North America, every elementary or middle school in North America. The way we do it isn't by putting a load on the teachers. Teachers don't have much to do with this. We find a green-hearted parent in every school. And that green-hearted parent organizes Green Action Family Night. And first, they take the book to the classrooms and let the kids go through it and get attached to it. And then they hold Green Action Family Night, and the kids know the book's going to be available, and half the money that their parents pay for the book stays in the school to fund the green action that the school is going to take. So that's what we're going to be doing. And we're going to start with a couple of schools, private schools here in Orlando on Earth Day. That's our soft launch. And the family night, instead of family night, we're going to go to Lake Eola to Earth Day. And I'm going to be speaking at 2:00 on Earth Day in the kids zone. And we're going to have the parents and kids get the book and go through the book together and decide what things they can do. Then they get to take the book home with them. I've got 2 organizations that are going to follow up. One is called Navigator Scouts. And Navigator Scouts is an inclusive branch of scouting. Doesn't matter who you are, we'll let you in. You can be a girl, you can be a boy. Doesn't matter if you're gay, and I don't care if you believe in God or not. You can be in my scout troop. That's different from Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. You may not realize that. So Navigator Scouts, which is an official scouting organization, has decided they want to continue the program with us. And the other is called Green Team Superheroes. And Green Team Superheroes is an organization created by a teacher who wants everybody to go green. So they'll be able to continue the program for us. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So I don't know what anybody else is doing, but that's my job for the next decade. Then I'll be 90, and then I'll find something else to do. Thank you.
Our board touched on a lot of the issues that were already covered, more climate change, education. I guess vegan awareness wasn't as covered today, so I came from a larger city where, from education, I became vegan just because they're more activists in a larger city, and we have mass transit, so we're not all isolated in our cars, and we can get out and socialize more. So when I came to Orlando, I'm searching for vegan events, and there's very, very little. Maybe some people may get together at a restaurant and have vegan food, but you won't find in a large city where people are marching in the streets and screaming on megaphones and, protesting. So I haven't found that, here yet, but it's growing. It's here. It's growing. Yeah. And recycling efforts, I find where I live, Orange County, we're supplied with a large recycling container with a lid, and my friend in Altamont has a small recycling container with no lid. So I guess with the county where you lives and impacts your recycling efforts sometimes, yeah. And wellness events, like having this type of facility, really, this is a great place for wellness, and having these type of events, it's like such a treasure in Orlando. Not many people know about this, and there's so much going on here. Yeah, yeah, and you had some points to share.
I recently moved to Orlando as well, but just joining, like environmental groups and like community events, like in like Yola has been, yeah, a big thing.
I want to make a point that I didn't make before, and that is, I think we've all realized that it's an awful lot easier to plant a new idea in the mind of a child than it is to change the mind of an adult. And that's why I work with kids and the people they love. And we're mobilizing the two strongest forces in the universe. That is the love of parents for their small children that diminishes over time, and the nagging power of kids.
It's a deadly combo. Alrighty, thank you everybody. We're going to really quickly share some of the events that we have coming up, and then we're going to start to close out. So, coming up next, storm drain labeling. Why is this important? Well, believe it or not, there are still people who dump things down storm drains, and you would be surprised just how terrible that mix of things can be. Everything from engine coolant to oil from their oil changes to bags full of leaves that they have raked up on their lawn. So there needs to be signs that say, please don't do this, and that it's actually illegal. So that's one of the things that we're doing. It's a goal to get every single storm drain in the county labeled, and that's something that is ongoing work. So April 9th, 10 to 11:30 a.m. And of course, these events are also listed on our Facebook page under events as well. A garden planting, which is really fantastic. Cypress Creek High School garden expansion, Saturday, April 9th, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., open to the public for people to come. Thanks so much. The project's sponsored by Siemens Gamesa, which has been really fantastic. We love enhancing urban agriculture, just as Dave said, getting kids connected to nature, understanding the seasons, seeing primary production of the biosphere from plants, and all of the wonderful creatures and decomposers and worms and insects and compost piles that is so extraordinarily important to get young people connected to at an early age, and people of all ages too. We're also really excited because we have our annual fundraiser coming up. We haven't been able to have one, unfortunately, since 2019. And this was a really special 2019 because Mayor Dyer, the mayor of Orlando, came out and did a proclamation declaring April 17th Ideas for Us Day, which was really cool. So we're going to be holding this event. You'll see that it's called the Solutions Showcase there. And if you're interested in learning more or even sponsoring the event, all that you have to do is go to ideasforus.org/solutions showcase. And it will send you over to that website that has everything to purchase a ticket. We're going to have Deepak Chopra and Tony Cho there. We're going to have A.Y. Young, who's one of the 17 youth ambassadors of the Sustainable Development Goals. You may have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals set up by 191 countries to kind of unify the metrics we use around sustainability. The Secretary General of the UN chose one person to represent each goal as an on-the-ground activist, and the only American was A.Y. Young that was chosen under the age of 30. He happens to be a climate rapper. He is totally nomadic, traveling the world right now, charging batteries from solar panels, and every concert that he does is entirely powered by the sun. And he's making an album right now with 17 tracks to represent each one of the SDGs. He's working with a lot of well-known artists, Billie Eilish, Paul McCartney, and more. So really awesome guy. Yeah, all three of them are going to be there in person. So come on out. Bright Ideas Awards, April 15th, coming up fast. So again, ideasforus.org/solutions showcase if you're interested in learning more about that. Beach cleanups, we love going to the beach. We love having beach cleanups. I think this is a photo from a recent one that we had in Daytona. Well, now we're going to New Smyrna Beach. Great way to meet people, make friends. What I think is really cool is we often have people from many different colleges in the area come out. So it's a chance for those students to meet one another. Otherwise, they wouldn't meet one another because they're at different schools. So that can be really cool. April 16th, 10 to 12 at Flagler Avenue Beachfront Park. And again, all of this is online. We're doing a social swap shop, which is something that's really cool, and us trading all different kinds of things with people in the community. That's going to be held at the Ivanhoe Park Brewing Company, April 26th. So we're really excited about that. and more details are online. Our next Hive is going to be on air pollution, which is going to be really exciting. So we've got some University of Central Florida professors coming out. They're going to be talking all about the science behind air pollution monitoring. And this is a pretty hot topic in Orlando because there has been a lot of evidence for coal ash poisoning of people within the radius of the Stanton energy plant. So this is soot that has been found in soil, on roofs, in gutters, and in people's lungs. So air pollution is a issue here as well, and they're going to share a lot of different facts on what we can do here in Central Florida about combating air pollution. Okay, so we have to be out of here in just a moment, but we have about 5 minutes to open the floor. This is called Bike Rack. So if anyone would like anything to share to the room, now is your chance. We want to make sure that this is always a good community platform for people to come and share some of the things that they're working on or doing. Come on up.
So my name is Becky Schaff, and I am actually working with quite a few candidates throughout Central Florida who are trying to get on the ballot. With redistricting, there are some districts that have a better chance of being represented by somebody who cares about sustainability and the environment. And right now, we're really working hard to get enough petitions to put them on the ballot. I brought some of those petitions tonight. If anybody is interested in signing them, I would absolutely love to get them. Some of them are people who worked to save Split Oak. Some of them are people who are working on water quality. These are just people who have a heart for sustainability and preservation. So I really want to help get them on the ballot. Thank you.
Fantastic. And you have the petitions over there if someone's interested? Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Yes. We hope so. If you're not, we're going to register you before we release you. All right. Anybody else? Dave, don't worry, I got you. But let's just see if there's anybody else who has anything to share. So far, so good. Okay, Dave, come on up.
Well, okay, I was just going to say, if anybody wants to work on the nationwide launch of help me get this as a worldwide phenomenon, I'm very happy to have you pitch in. And already I've had over 70 UCM interns help with this project. They're the ones that did the research on each of these items and built the website and so forth. So we're going to make this worldwide. And if you want to be part of the team, just come and see me and I'll give you a card and stay in touch.
Brilliant. Dave is an inspiration. I hope to have half as much energy as he does when I am 80. So that is awesome. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Don't erase your boards. Leave them there. Like I said, we're going to come over and photograph them so that we can use this to formulate future action projects. And we really appreciate you coming out. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your April.